Kate had spent years living on the streets, learning to survive through her wits and resourcefulness. Every day, she sifted through dumpsters and trash cans in search of anything useful, from food to clothes, or anything that might make her life just a little bit easier. It wasn't glamorous, but it was survival. One morning, while rummaging through a trash can outside a corner store, she found something that made her heart race. It was a plastic bag, tucked away under some discarded wrappers, that felt heavier than anything she had ever encountered. Curiosity piqued. Kate opened it, and what she found inside nearly made her collapse in shock. $1 million in cash, cold, hard cash. Stacks of bills, neatly bundled, lay inside the bag, gleaming in the morning light. Kate could hardly believe her eyes. She had lived her life in poverty, scraping by with nothing, and now this. She felt a rush of exhilaration, her mind racing with possibilities. This could be the break she had been waiting for, the kind of money that could change everything. But as she sifted through the bills, her eyes caught something else, a passport buried beneath the cash. The name on the passport stopped her cold. It was a name she knew well, too well. Her heart sank as the image on the passport matched a face that had haunted her for years. The man in the photo was someone she had once known, someone whose life she had briefly touched in a past she had long since tried to forget. The sudden recognition hit her like a punch to the gut, and before she knew it, tears were streaming down her face. Kate was at a crossroads. She stood there in the alley, holding the bag of cash, her hands trembling. She could easily walk away with the money, vanish into the shadows, and live a life of luxury. No one would ever know. But the guilt gnawed at her insides. She couldn't ignore what she had found. She knew, deep down, that this wasn't her money to keep. This wasn't just some random fortune. It belonged to him, the man in the passport. The man she knew, a man whose life had been intertwined with hers in ways she didn't care to remember. As much as she wanted to keep the money, Kate knew what she had to do. The decision was made. She had to find him. But the more she thought about it, the more the task seemed impossible. How could she possibly find him? She had no idea where he was, what his life had become, or how she would track him down. The money was clearly meant for someone important, and Kate couldn't let it go to waste. But finding him was a whole other challenge. With a deep breath, Kate began to gather her thoughts. The discovery of the money had raised so many questions in her mind. How had it ended up in the trash? What had happened to the man whose passport she had found? And most puzzling of all, how did she know him? She had once been a part of his world, but time had blurred the details. Kate's day had started like any other. She had woken up on the cold, hard ground in the park, tucked under an old piece of cardboard to shield her from the morning chill. The nights had been getting colder as winter approached, but she had managed to make do. After gathering her things, she had started her daily routine, scrounging for food, looking for scraps, hoping for a lucky break. And today, the break had come in the form of a trash can. The phrase, "one man's trash is another man's treasure," had become a guiding principle for Kate over the years. It wasn't just a saying to her, it was a survival tactic. She had found all sorts of things in the trash, books, clothes, even old electronics. But nothing had ever compared to what she had found today. $1 million and a past she had long since tried to forget, all wrapped up in a single, unbelievable moment. As Kate walked away from the trash can with the bag of money, she couldn't help but feel the weight of her decision. She had been given a second chance, but what would she do with it? The man whose name was on the passport had once been part of her life, but now he was a stranger. Would he even remember her? Would he want her help? She didn't know. But one thing was certain, she couldn't keep this money for herself. She had to return it, even if it meant confronting a past that was best left behind. Kate's life had always been a struggle. She had learned to survive through her wits, navigating the streets and finding whatever she could in the trash. But that morning was different. As she made her way to her usual spot, a quiet corner near the edge of town where she would sit, sometimes relax, or even beg for spare change, Her eyes caught sight of something unusual sticking out of a nearby trash can. She had walked past countless trash cans before, never thinking twice, but today something drew her attention. At first, Kate was ready to move on. The plastic bag seemed insignificant, just another bit of refuse. But then, as her fingers brushed over the bag, she felt an unexpected weight. Curiosity got the better of her, and with some effort, she pulled it out of the trash. When the bag came free, her heart skipped a beat. Inside were several neatly bundled stacks of money, $100 bills wrapped tightly in rubber bands. She couldn't believe her eyes. The weight of it, the neatness of it, it all screamed fortune. Her mind raced as she stood frozen in place, the noise of the busy street fading into the background. For a long moment, she was paralyzed by the sheer improbability of it. How could this have ended up here? Who would throw away this much money? Kate's pulse quickened as the reality of what she had found began to sink in. Her first instinct was to keep it. It was too much money to ignore, and in her situation, it felt like an opportunity she could not pass up. But then a rush of guilt hit her. She couldn't just take the money. It didn't belong to her. It was clear that this belonged to someone else, and she couldn't shake the feeling that taking it would make her no better than the thieves and criminals she had seen in her life. No matter how tempting, she knew deep down that the right thing to do was to find the owner. The next challenge was how to find the owner. Kate had no idea where to start. Her eyes fell on the bundle of bills again, and she thought of how dangerous this money could be. It was obvious that whoever it belonged to would be desperate to get it back, and that made her hesitant to be too obvious. So, without thinking too much, she swapped a few bills for colorful paper from a nearby shop, folding it into the stack to mark it in case she needed to identify it later. She kept a portion of the money just in case she needed it for emergencies. It wasn't long before Kate shared her discovery with Matt, a friend she had met in the streets who had become her confidant. Matt listened carefully, and together they made a plan. They would need to be discreet, and they couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Flo, a friend who had helped them in the past, suggested they lay low for a while, offering them shelter at a safe house, far from the prying eyes of anyone who might have been looking for the money. Days passed, and they began to piece together a plan. Kate's first instinct was to visit the local art gallery, a place that had always intrigued her but seemed far beyond her reach. They decided to go together, hoping they might find something that could lead them to the owner of the money. The gallery was quiet that day, with only a few visitors wandering through the exhibits. It wasn't long before Kate spotted something familiar. There, hanging on the wall, was a painting that bore a striking resemblance to the man in the passport she had found with the money. She pressed the gallery owner for information, but he was evasive. All he could offer was a first name, nothing else. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give Kate a glimmer of hope. She quickly jotted down the name and the details of the painting, her heart racing. Could this be the breakthrough she was looking for? There had to be a connection, and Kate was determined to find it. Back at the safe house, Kate and Matt huddled over their phones and laptops, diving into research. They had a name, but that was all. The search was slow, and at times it felt like they were chasing shadows. But then, after days of scoring the internet, they found something. The name from the painting matched an artist who had exhibited her work in local galleries. It was a long shot, but Kate knew they had to take it. With renewed determination, they reached out to Emily, the artist, hoping she could help them track down the man from the painting. They couldn't reveal too much, but they needed Emily's trust. To their surprise, she agreed to meet with them. Emily set up a discreet meeting, and Kate knew this could be the moment that changed everything. This was the chance to finally get the answers they so desperately needed. As the day of the meeting approached, Kate felt a mixture of excitement and fear. She didn't know what to expect, but she knew one thing for sure. She was getting closer to solving the mystery of the money, and no matter what happened, she wouldn't back down. The day had arrived, and Kate and Matt sat anxiously in a small, dimly lit cafe, waiting. The minutes seemed to stretch, each one thick with anticipation. Kate's mind raced with the uncertainty of what was to come. Would they finally meet the person who owned the money? Would this lead to answers or more danger? When the door opened, the man walked in. Kate and Matt exchanged a glance and instantly recognized him. He had the same features as the man in the passport, and the moment he approached them, they introduced themselves. What followed, however, was far from what they had expected. As the man listened to their explanation, his demeanor was calm, but something in his eyes suggested he was holding back. There was more to this encounter than met the eye. They hadn't been talking for long when a sudden, unsettling feeling crept over Kate. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up, and she couldn't shake the sensation that they were being watched. Suddenly, the man's expression shifted, and before she could react, he stood up, excused himself, and left the cafe hurriedly. Kate and Matt quickly followed suit, but as they stepped outside, they noticed a shadow lingering behind them, too deliberate to be coincidence. Someone was tailing them. The realization hit hard and fast. They were in danger. Kate's pulse quickened. Every step they took felt weighted with the possibility of being caught. They tried to blend into the crowded streets, but it was clear they couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. As the pressure mounted, they decided to take a detour through narrow alleys, weaving through the city's winding paths in a desperate attempt to lose their pursuer. The risk of discovery loomed with every turn, and Kate knew that any wrong move could lead to catastrophic consequences. Matt glanced at her, reading her thoughts. He could see the strain on her face, the inner battle that raged within her. "We'll figure this out, Kate," he said quietly, as if trying to reassure them both. "We're in this together." Despite his words, the weight of the money pressed on her conscience. Returning it could mean stepping back into a life she'd left behind with no guarantee of safety. But keeping it, running with it, felt like an even greater betrayal of the principles she had spent her life trying to uphold. As the night deepened, Kate found herself staring out the window of their temporary refuge, the chaos of the evening still buzzing in her ears. The weight of the decision felt suffocating. She knew fleeing with the money could offer her an escape, an opportunity to change everything and leave behind the harsh reality of her life on the streets. But the thought of betraying her integrity gnawed at her. In the quiet solitude of the early morning, as the first rays of dawn crept through the window, Kate made up her mind. The world outside was uncertain, filled with risks and dangers, but one thing had become clear to her. She couldn't live with herself if she walked away from this. The money, for all its potential, was no longer just a symbol of escape. It was a test, a measure of her resolve to do what was right even when the path ahead seemed uncertain. She stood up with newfound determination, her purpose clear. The temptation to flee had faded, replaced by a stronger, unshakable resolve. She would return the money no matter what. With Matt by her side, Kate felt a renewed sense of purpose. The $1 million, once a burden, was now a symbol of her commitment to make things right. It was no longer just about the money. It was about justice, integrity, and honoring the choices she had made. Together, they prepared for the unknown, fully aware that they were stepping into a world filled with danger and uncertainty. But Kate was ready. This mission had become something bigger than she ever imagined. It wasn't just about finding answers. It was about standing by her principles, no matter the cost. Kate and Matt arrived at the discreet location chosen by the artist, a quaint cafe nestled in a quiet corner of the city. The cafe seemed oddly serene amidst the whirlwind of their adventure, and they waited with bated breath for the next chapter of their journey to unfold. The cafe, bathed in soft morning light, provided an unexpected sense of calm amidst the chaos of their mission. Kate and Matt sat at a corner table, their eyes scanning the entrance for the arrival of the man they had sought for so long. The serendipity of their meeting and the promise of a brighter future hung in the air, mingling with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. As Kate and Matt sat in the quaint cafe, their nerves on edge, a distinguished-looking man entered. Kate's heart skipped a beat as she instantly recognized him from the painting and the passport. It was the man they had been seeking, the key to the enigma that had consumed them. Kate sat at the cafe, waiting for the man who would change her life. When he arrived, he introduced himself as Cameron, speaking calmly and reassuringly. As he shared his connection to the money Kate had found, the truth stunned her. Cameron explained that he had intentionally left the $1 million in the trash, hoping someone truly in need would find it. His belief in the power of kindness and acts of generosity touched Kate deeply. Moved by Cameron's kindness, Kate learned about his past acts of generosity and how they shaped his beliefs. In a surprising gesture, he offered her a fresh start, mentorship, a job at his company, and the guidance she needed to rebuild her life. Grateful, Kate eagerly accepted, seeing a future filled with hope and possibilities. The $1 million, once a symbol of uncertainty, now represented a new chapter, one of compassion and second chances. With Cameron's help, she left her past behind and looked toward a brighter future. As they planned her new life, Kate reflected on how far she had come, from the streets to sitting with someone who believed in her. The money was no longer a burden, but a reminder of how unexpected kindness could change everything. Kate and Cameron worked together to spread hope and inspiration, knowing that even in the darkest times, the human spirit could rise and thrive.